My name's Caleb, I'm a proud Australian and I love celebrating Australia Day. To me, it's a day where I can sit back, have a couple of drinks, listen to the Hottest 100 with some mates, and also just celebrate belonging to such a lucky country. But in the last few months, we've seen Triple J almost change the date of the Hottest 100, and we've also seen the city of Fremantle attempt to change the date of their Australia Day celebrations from the 26th of January to the 28th. So what I want to find out is what this recent push to change the date is all about. And to do that, I'll be talking to some key people about what they think about changing the date and what happens if we actually do change the date. I'll be starting this journey right here in the heart of Australia, Alice Springs, which is also my hometown. So we're going to the Alice Springs Town Council, which is nostalgic. I actually used to work there in 2015 and I ran events for young people and programs for young people through the Town Council. One of the people who backed us the most, though, is a guy called Damien Ryan, and he's actually the mayor of Alice Springs. And I feel like he's probably like a great person to talk to about Australia Day because he runs Australia Day ceremonies and would really understand the importance of Australia Day. And so I guess we can ask him, why it's on the 26th and like the importance of that date. What's at stake if we do change the date? Who loses here?
I've not seen a good argument yet as to why it changes.
Absolutely.
So, Australia Day is a celebration which should make every Australian feel proud. In our community, there are always events that happen. A very big part of local government is a citizenship ceremony. So 4 times a year we run major citizenship ceremonies: Australia Day, Territory Day, Harmony Day and Citizenship Day. Okay. And the most popular by far is Australia Day. Yeah. If people are going to make a decision to become an Australian, they feel it's very appropriate to do on the day that's called Australia Day. Yeah. And you see the pride. I've never had to make that decision. I was born an Australian. You look at other people who come from other parts of the world who make a decision to swear their allegiance to Australia and its people. It's a really big commitment by people. If we shift that day, what does that say, or what does that do to the psyche of those people? So I think that we continue to work bringing a community together, that Australia Day is an important day in our calendar. What
do you think the first step to an actual discussion is about changing the date of Australia Day?
No, I think the big discussion really is the constitutional recognition. Okay. So, I think that is the most important facet. Definitely. A lot of work being done by Recognise and organisations like that over the last 5 years. There was a previous Prime Minister set up a advisory group on this. We need to see that move forward. Absolutely. That is the most important issue. Let's clear that up first of all, and that's just one step further to a more inclusive community.
So I can definitely agree with what Damien said about immigration and citizenship. Like, coming here to Australia and becoming a citizen means so much, and I know that because my parents became citizens and they became citizens on Australia Day. So it's a big thing to those people. It's not just parties, which is a really good point, and I can definitely relate to that. But another thing that Damien said, which really struck out to me, was that he actually hasn't heard of any good arguments for why it should change. And to be honest, I sort of know the reasoning behind it, but I don't really know. So I think we've got to figure out what this whole push is about, what the root causes are. So we're here in Melbourne now, and we're about to talk to Paul Gurry, who's an Indigenous activist who's done a lot of work, especially around Indigenous deaths in custody. Paul's a great person to talk to about this because he's an Indigenous Australian and he can explain to us what January the 26th actually means to Indigenous Australians. And I feel like this means that we can figure out what this whole movement is about and what the root causes are and what's at stake if the date doesn't change.
I see the day as like a day of mourning, as do a lot of other Aboriginal people. And the issue is January 26th at the moment. It's a iconic day for a lot of people in this country, and if we don't challenge those iconic moments in history with being associated with violence and ongoing flow-on effects for other people, it's not going to be an issue that we solve. Yeah. So I think to make a decision to change the date, would be a positive decision.
Definitely. Yeah.
It would acknowledge the past that we have and the present that we want and future. And it would offer a moment for Aboriginal people to actually mourn.
Absolutely. What's at stake if we don't change the date?
I think we're just going to keep on having like all this frustration and like tension on the street. Like people, it's just going to only keep on getting worse, and it just doesn't offer the First Peoples of this continent some kind of like way to just like deal with the emotions.
Yeah. So what do you think about, say, young Australians who want to celebrate Australia Day, but not for the reason that they're being patriotic or that they, love Australia or they're proud of the history of that day, but more for the fact that they just want to hang out with mates and, have a party on the day?
I think you're still like complicit to an act. So you could probably move that day like a few days later, like celebrating. But I think, it should be like a day of mourning. If it's called a day of mourning, people will allow themselves to be more accepting of the fact that there is this whole dark history of this continent. That we're allowed to be upset with, and that it's not just like one people that should be upset. It should be everyone that should be upset by it.
I sort of understood why the date needed to change, but that really, really put it into perspective. Just understanding that for Indigenous Australians, it's a day of mourning, and that's what it means for them, while the rest of the population is out there celebrating the day. It's pretty harsh, really harsh actually, and I can completely understand why they want that date to change, why January the 26th is such a hard day. Like me personally, I feel like shit for knowing that I'm celebrating a day that means so much more to Indigenous Australians. It's sort of confused, I don't know. This is Liam, he's the man usually behind the camera.
So we were just having a chat about what we had planned for January 26th, or what we were thinking about planning to do on that day, and we figured that we may as well catch that discussion on camera.
So we're in a weird spot. Basically, we want to celebrate Australia Day. It sucks that, having a day that's meant that much for a while, where we've just, it's been about mates, you don't want to miss out, And the thing is, even if say just it was us, having drinks or something and listening to the Hottest 100, together, just the two of us.
Yeah, we're
still celebrating. It still counts as celebrating it, even if there's no Aussie flags waved, there's no no tattoos, all that jazz. It's not about you can separate being patriotism from it.
Yeah, but you're still celebrating on the day.
Yeah, and that's what Paul said. Yeah,
and I mean, if we're going to talk about a day which has got so much history and so much conflict behind it, and the fact that we're still gathering on the day and we're not gathering and acknowledging any of that, and we shouldn't be doing what we're doing on the day.
Yeah, and
that's the really hard thing to come to terms with because of the tradition behind it, because of what it means to us as individuals and Australia as a whole. It's just unfortunate that it's on the day.
Yeah. So what would happen if it did change? And I wonder, how many other young people feel the same way that we do. Are you celebrating Australia Day this year?
Yeah, I think I will be. Just hanging out with some mates or something.
Probably I'll go out with a couple of friends, listen to the Hottest 100, that sort of thing.
So I'm probably going to treat it as just another public holiday.
Sure.
Just going to hang out with some friends.
Cool. And have you celebrated it in the past? January 26th? What have you done?
We usually just, have some beers by the pool, listen to the Triple J Hottest 100.
I've been to parties where we're celebrating the Hottest 100, and I have friends that are draping themselves in, our flag and getting around Australia Day, but I've never really looked at it as a day of celebration.
Usually, I don't really pay much mind.
Yeah.
If there's a countdown that's on, might listen to that.
So what does it mean to you? What does the day mean to you?
So to me, I see it as Invasion Day, and it's the day we were invaded, and it's the day, of Indigenous people, their lives were changed forever.
Yeah.
But also, I see it as Triple J Hottest 100 Day.
Yeah.
And I want us to celebrate it. I think, Triple J Hottest 100 is fantastic, and I also want us to celebrate our country, but I don't think that day is an appropriate day.
I mean, I guess the day, the actual day means nothing, but the idea of celebrating my country, celebrating everyone around, and being thankful that I'm Australian, that's important to me.
Australia Day, man, is just another day for me. It's a day off, working class immigrant background, so it's just like a good day to have a nice sunny day off.
And what do you think that the day means for Indigenous Australians?
I think for them, it means like it's a day where people remember Australia being invaded, and there's those quite to Indigenous Australians there is that link, and then there's that memory with that.
I honestly don't really know, but like, I mean, I know it was like the day Captain Cook landed.
Like a lot of people think, I think it's a day that is pretty insensitive. So I mean, I try and look at it from a public holiday point of view.
So from talking to other young Australians, it seems that they have similar opinions to Liam and I, which is that Australia Day is about music and mateship rather than the date itself. The next person we're going to talk to is Mark Yedeka-Paulson, who is the campaign director for Recognise, which is Australia's leading campaign and movement for Indigenous recognition in the Constitution. Mark, as an Indigenous Australian, what does January 26th or Australia Day, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, look, January 26th is, as an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person, as a blackfella in this country, January 26th is our hardest day to reconcile. It's the hardest day because, on the one hand, it's a day of celebration of nationhood. On the other hand, it's a day that commemorates the British flag being raised and the claim over this continent, over this land.
Yeah.
Because those two stories are trying to be put together, that's one of the reasons why there's such a clash and it's difficult. And if we were to change the date, to find another date, it would have to find a way to suitably pick up our colonial history, our Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander history, and celebrate who we are right now. Now that's going to be our challenge. That's our creative challenge for this generation to do that. We've got the oldest cultures on Earth, and every culture on Earth, and we're living here, you know, where we get on quite well. So how do you actually celebrate all of that on the same day that we know that the flag was done and put here illegitimately? And yet we've become a great country since that day. So it's turmoil.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, do you think that the date needs to change?
I think one of the real sticking points is holding fast to it has to be the 26th of January. If you hold fast to that, then you close off your mind to other possibilities. By the same token, if all you want to focus on is the mourning side of it and the shame and that side, then you're not opening up your mind, you're not opening up yourself to the possibility of celebration. So my personal point of view to do with January 26th or Australia Day, how do we celebrate this as a country? I really liked the suggestion that was put forward a couple of years back now by the former Deputy Prime Minister, Tim Fischer. He suggested that we ought to make the celebrations of Australia Day the fourth Friday of January.
For young people now who are celebrating Australia Day but want to acknowledge what it means to Indigenous Australians, is there a way that they can celebrate the day while paying their respects?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the ideal would be, possibly we treat this a little bit like Easter, because you know how Easter, for some people, Easter means it's a camping long weekend, 4-day long weekend, you just go camping.
Yeah.
That's what you do at Easter. But for others, Easter is for other devout, those of the Christian faith, particularly for them, Easter is a devout, religious, sacred time. And so in the same sort of way, you'd want to hope that we could do this as Australians to say, for some of us, January 26th is a really, really solemn time.
Yeah.
It's really, really dedicated and they're really serious about it. But for others, it's just like, man, this is actually a really good time for us to be together. If there's one thing I want to say from a generational point of view, is that one of the great licenses of being a younger Australian is that you can ask profound questions around, well, why are we doing it this way? And we're doing this because that's the way, basically it's the way I've grown up doing it.
Yeah.
It's up to our future generations of Australians to be able to say, we're reshaping this because
Yeah.
this is the way we want to pass it on to our children.
This last month has been huge for us. We've learnt so much and we've had some amazing moments, but we've also been really challenged and confronted. We started with finding out that changing the date of Australia Day actually isn't as easy as it seems. There's a lot to it, and that the day holds a lot of significance to citizens who become citizens on the day. So more significance than it would to me, who just celebrates the day for a good party, pretty much. We also found out, though, that January the 26th is a day of mourning for a lot of Indigenous Australians, and that celebrating on that day is quite disrespectful. Also, yeah, feels pretty wrong too. When we asked whether or not celebrating January 26th without even being patriotic or celebrating the history of that day is okay, we found out that it's still complicit in celebrating. And so that really surprised us and it really challenged us. And when we talked to other young Australians, we found out that they thought the same thing as well. So we're going to leave this here with our interview with Mark, where he said that this is actually our generation's creative challenge, to find a way that we can all, as a nation, pay our respects and mourn what happened on the day, because it's a day that we cannot forget. But also celebrate how far we've come as a nation, because that's also extremely important too. The bottom line for us, though, is that for a day that's truly Australia Day, it needs to be a day that all of us can celebrate as a nation.